everyone, we're going to keep reading Fairy's Mistake. I accidentally didn't pause at all and read the whole book, and then I overran the length of the video, so I'm going to have to edit this. We'll see how it all turns out. We'll get started now. Chapter 9. The fairy Ethelinda was appalled. This was the last straw. She had to do something. Harold was in the courtyard practicing his swordplay. She materialized in front of him. She didn't bother disguising herself, hoping he'd be terrified when he saw the works. All 7 foot and 3 inches of her, her fleshy pink wings, the shimmer of the air around her, and the purple light she was always bathed in from her flashing wand. "You're a fairy, right?" Harold said when he saw her. He didn't seem frightened. "I'm the fairy Ethelinda," she said, lowering her voice from the scream she wanted to a mere roar. Harold grinned. "Good guessing on my part, considering I've never met a fairy before." "I'm the one who made jewels come out of Rosella's mouth." Harold almost jumped up and down. He was so excited. "That was you? Really? Say, Ethel, tell me, what did my sweetie pie do to make you do it?" "My name is Ethelinda," the fairy boomed. "I rewarded her after she gave me a drink of water from the well. I can do that. I'm not thirsty." "Do you know you're making poor Ethelinda miserable?" "She's not miserable. She's a princess. She's deliriously happy." Ethelinda tried a different approach. "Why do you want jewels so much? Who wouldn't want them? Wouldn't you want them?" "Not if they were making my betrothed unhappy." "How could she be unhappy? If I were in her shoes, I'd be delighted. She wouldn't be a princess today if I hadn't come along. She gets to wear a crown. She has nice gowns, royal ladies in waiting, and me. You have to stop making her talk." "But she has to talk. That's what makes me happy." Rosella waved her wand. Prince Harold was 1 second away from becoming a frog. Then she lowered it. Her self-confidence was gone. If she turned him into a frog, he might figure out a way to make it better than being a prince. She certainly didn't want to reward him the way that she had accidentally rewarded Myrtle. She didn't know what to do. The royal manservant who'd seen Rosella faint finally reached the courtyard. He ran to Harold, and Ethelinda vanished. Myrtle's party started at 2 o'clock. The school teacher arrived first. His present was a slate and 10 boxes of colored chalk. Myrtle opened one of the boxes, and she wrote on the slate in green and orange letters, "Thank you. I'll let you know when I run out of chalk." The baker came next. His cake was so big it barely fit through the cottage doorway. The icing was chocolate. The decorations were pink with whipped blue frosting. The writing on the cake said Happy 14 and 6 weeks birthday. Myrtle, please keep quiet. The whole village came. Nobody wanted to take a chance on making Myrtle mad. The guests filled the cottage and the yards of the surrounding cottages, and the widow thanked them all for coming. Myrtle collected her presents. She smiled when anyone handed her an especially big box. The food was the finest that anybody could remember. Myrtle ate so many poached quail eggs and roasted chestnuts that she almost got sick. After everybody ate, she opened her presents. There were hundreds of them. Her favorites were a framed sampler that read, "Speak to me only with thine eyes," a bouquet of mums, a music box that played "Hush, Little Baby," a silver quill pen engraved with the motto, "The pen is mightier than the voice," a parrot that sat on Myrtle's shoulder and repeated over and over, "Shut your trap! Shut your trap! Shut your trap!" A charm bracelet with the golden letters SILENCE and E. After all the presents were opened, everybody sang happy birthday. Myrtle was so thrilled she smiled and clapped her hands. Rosella grew gravely ill, and Harold was seriously frightened. Even under her mounds and mounds of swan-down quilts, she couldn't stop shivering. She felt as if vultures' claws were scratching her throat, and a carpenter was hammering at her temples. The royal physician was called in to examine her, and when he finished, he told Harold that she was very sick. He said her only hope of recovering was to lay in bed and rest with complete silence. His fee for the visit was the jewels he'd collected while he listened to her chest and made her say "ah" 16 times. Chapter 10. Myrtle had a birthday party every week. She and the widow laughed and laughed and laughed at their silliness in wishing for jewels to come out of Myrtle's mouth. When Myrtle got bored between parties, she would speak into a big jar, and then she'd let the bugs and the snakes loose in the garden and make them race. She and her mother would have a grand old time betting on the winners. Rosella got better slowly, so slowly that Ethelinda's patience snapped. The evening after Myrtle's fourth party, Ethelinda materialized herself into the widow's cottage. I am the fairy Ethelinda, who rewarded your sister and punished you. You have to help Rosella, she thundered. Myrtle sneered. I do? I have to? A bull snake slithered under Ethelinda's gown, and a gnat bit her wing. Ouch! Ethelinda yelped. Be careful, dear, the widow told Myrtle. You might make a poisonous snake. Yes, you have to help her, Ethelinda said, or I'll punish you severely. Myrtle wrote on her slate, I like your punishments. I can take your punishments away, Ethelinda said. As fast as she could, Myrtle wrote, what do I have to do? After that, Ethelinda explained the problem. I can fix that, Myrtle wrote. Ethelinda transported Myrtle to the palace, where Rosella was staring up at her lace bed canopy, and wondering when her nighttime guards would arrive. As Ethelinda and Myrtle materialized, Ethelinda turned herself back into an old lady. I've brought your sister to help you, my dear, Ethelinda said. Rosella stared at them. Myrtle would never help her. Myrtle had brought her slate with her. She wrote, Change clothes with me and hide under the covers. Rosella didn't move. She wondered if she was delirious. Go ahead and do it, dear, Ethelinda said. She won't hurt you. Rosella nodded. She put on Myrtle's silk night dress with gold embroidery and slipped under the blankets. Myrtle got into Rosella's silk night dress with silver embroidery. Myrtle climbed into Rosella's bed. She sat up and yodeled, long and loud. A hog's new snake wriggled out of her mouth. Harold heard her, even though he was on the other side of the palace. He started running and leaping and skipping towards the sound. She's better! She's well again! He yelled. How many jewels did a yodel make? He wondered. Ethelinda made the snake disappear. Then she made herself invisible. Precious! Harold said, coming through the door, and he dashed to the bed. The roses are back in your cheeks. Speak to me. What roses? Myrtle yelled as loud as she could. I feel terrible. The head of a boa constrictor filled her mouth. Harold jumped back. Ah! What's that? Rosella lifted a tiny corner of the blanket so that she could watch. A snake slithered out and wound itself around Myrtle's waist. Myrtle grinned at Harold. Do you like him? Should I name him after you? 3 hornets flew straight at him. One of them stung him on the nose. The other 2 buzzed around his head. Ouch! What's going on, Honey Pie? That's a snake. Where did the jewels go? Why are bugs and snakes coming out? This is fun, Myrtle thought. Who would have thought I could scare a prince? Poor Harold, Rosella thought. But it serves him right. He looks so silly. She fought back a giggle and wished she could make a bug come out of her mouth every once in a while. I'm angry. This is what happens when I get angry. A scorpion stuck its head out of Myrtle's mouth. Yow! Why are you angry? At me? What did I do? It's not so great being a princess, Myrtle yelled. Nobody listens to me. All they care about are jewels. You're the worst. That's all you care about, too. I don't want to eat wild boar ever again. I hate wild boar. The air was so thick with insects that Harold could hardly see. Snakes wriggled across the carpets. Snakes slithered up through the sconces. Snakes oozed down the tapestries. A giant one hung from the chandelier, its head swaying slowly. A milk snake slipped under the covers and set its clammy body next to Rosella. She wanted to scream and run. Instead, she bit her lip and stayed very, very still. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Ouch, that hurt. I'm not going to talk anymore unless I want to, Myrtle screamed. All right, you won't have to, and I'll listen to you. I promise. Something bit his foot all the way through his boot. Everyone will listen by order of Prince Harold and Princess Rosella, Myrtle yelled. And Princess Rosella, Harold echoed. Myrtle lowered her voice. Now leave me. I need my rest. Chapter 11. After Harold left, Ethelinda made the snakes and bugs disappear, and Rosella came out from under the covers. Thank you, she told her sister, and an emerald fell on the counterpane. Myrtle snatched up the jewel and said, You're welcome. She snagged the fly before it got to Rosella's face, and then she crushed it in her fist. You've done a good deed, Ethelinda began. Myrtle shook her head. Don't reward me. Thanks, but no thanks. She let 2 cockroaches fall onto the bed. Ethelinda asked if Myrtle would help Rosella again if she needed it. Why should I? Myrtle asked. I'll pay you, Rosella said. Myrtle pocketed the 2 diamonds. Not bad. She'd get to frighten the prince again and get jewels for it, too. Okay. Myrtle and Rosella switched clothes again. Then Ethelinda sent Myrtle back home. When Myrtle was gone, Ethelinda said she had to leave too. She vanished. Rosella sank back into her pillows. She didn't want Myrtle to help again, or even Ethelinda. She wanted to solve the problems of Harold and his poor subjects all by herself. Harold didn't dare visit Rosella again that day, but he did command the royal servants to listen to her. So Rosella got rid of her nighttime guards, and she had her meal of poached quail eggs and roasted chestnuts at last. He also ordered the royal ladies in waiting to bring her slate and chalk. From then on, she wrote instead of talking to them. She was tired of having them dive into her lap whenever she said anything. Then she had them bring her a box with a lock and a key. She kept the box and the slate by her side so that she would be ready when Harold came. He showed up a week after Myrtle's visit. Rosella felt fine by then. She was sitting at her window watching a juggler in the courtyard. Honey, he poked his head in, ready to run if the room was full of creepy crawlies. But the coast seemed clear, so he stepped in all the way. He was carrying a bouquet of daisies and a box of taffy. All better, sweetheart? He held the daisies in front of his face in case the hornets started flying. He looked so scared, Rosella thought. She smiled to make him stop worrying. He lowered the bouquet cautiously and placed it on a table. Then he sat next to her and looked over. She seemed healthy. The silk nightdress was cute. Blue was a good color for her. He hoped she wasn't feeling miserable anymore. Anyone who was going to be married to him should be the happiest maiden in the kingdom. Still, he wanted to make her talk up enough jewels for a new palace. Then, after that, he wouldn't mind a golden coach and a few other items. But he wanted her to be happy too. They sat there, not saying anything. Oh, here, Harold said finally, and held out the bouquet and candy. She took them. Thank you. An opal hovered on her lip and tumbled out. Harold reached out for it, but Rosella was faster. She opened her box and dropped in the opal and clicked it shut. It clinked against the stones already in there, and she snapped the box shut. That was pretty selfish of her, Harold thought. He started to get mad, but then he thought of boa constrictors and hornets, and he calmed down. What's the box for, darling? My jewels. A pearl came out this time. A big one. It went in the box, too. Honey, sweetie pie, what are you going to do with them? Give them away. Your subjects need them more than we do. No, you don't, Harold hollered. She couldn't. It was all right to give away the jewels for the engagement ceremony. That was once in a lifetime. But she wanted to make a habit of it? You can't give them all away. I won't allow it. Rosella wrote on her slate, I'm trying not to get angry. No, don't get mad, Harold started backing away. But don't you want a new palace? I'll tell you what, we'll name a wing after you. It'll be the Rosella wing. How would you like that? She shook her head. This palace is beautiful. Look at it. It's wonderful. All those gems going into the box, thought Harold. Wasted. She gave them away. Soon his subjects would be richer than he was. Tell you what, we'll split it 50-50. I won't read a million books out loud just to fill up your treasure chest. Harold counted as they fell. 2 diamonds, 3 bloodstones, 1 hyacinth, 1 turquoise. He sighed. All right, my love. 50-50. Rosella wanted to be fair. He had made her a princess after all. They shook hands, then they kissed. Epilogue. Myrtle never came to her sister's rescue ever again. The 50-50 deal worked out perfectly. Harold got his new palace, a golden coach, eventually, and Rosella was happy talking to her subjects and making sure they had enough plows and winter coats and leather for making shoes. She also built a new school and library and swimming pool. In time, she and Harold grew to love each other very much. Harold even stopped trying to steal the jewels from Rosella's wooden box while she was sleeping, and Rosella stopped counting them every morning when she woke. Myrtle and her mother went into the bug and snake racing business. People came from 20 kingdoms to watch Myrtle's races. They bet beetles against spiders, or rattlers against pythons, or grasshoppers against garter snakes. The widow would call the races, and Myrtle would take the bets. The whole village got very rich from the tourist trade, and Myrtle became truly popular, which annoyed her. Ethelinda grew more careful. Myrtle was her last mistake. Nowadays, when she punishes people, they stay punished, and when she rewards them, they don't get sick. They all live happily ever after. The end. That was The Fairy's Mistake. If you guys liked it, let me know, and I'll read some other stories from the Kingdom of Biddle. There's Princess Sonora and Her Long Sleep, and then there's O for Biddle's Sake, which is, I'm pretty sure, like a twist on The Princess and the Pea, if I'm remembering correctly. I always loved that one a lot. Anyways, I'm glad I could share this with you. We'll see how editing works, because I accidentally didn't take breaks when I was filming, and now I have to cut them together. But I'll see you guys next time. Till then, stay happy and safe. Goodbye.